Oh, that looks good. Alright, how's everyone doing? Today we're going to talk about ET encounters. Extraterrestrial encounters. And what does it mean? What does it mean if you have an encounter? And how do we know if those encounters even exist? There's so many ways you could talk about this. It really is. But I guess I'll talk about my personal experience. So my personal experiences as a whole is I've had spiritual encounters, like talked about in my previous video. Is that I've always had a spiritual connection with some kind of spiritual encounters, whether it be shadow beings or angels, demonic in nature, negative entities. I've had those kind of experiences. But as far as ET contact, making contact with actual beings, didn't really start till about 2010, when I started having my awakening process. And basically my awakening process is that everything changed in my life, and I just started doing research. And I began to look into meditation, deep meditation, and look at the many options for meditation, because there's so many options with meditation. It's uncanny. So I was watching people do channeling and allowing beings to enter into their body, and there's two different kind of channelings, and I'll talk about that another day. But I was looking at channeling, and then remote viewing popped up. So I looked into remote viewing, and I also self-discovered the higher self aspect. And I was always kind of curious about what these higher selves were, but I found out that the connection with higher selves is actually your connection with different yous, or you are experiencing different lives at the same time simultaneously. So I started to encounter different beings that way, and then I discovered my past lives in the process. It's rather complicated, but anyway, so ET encounters. So my first ET encounter I ever had was when I was remote viewing, and I discovered the grays, the famous gray beings, the small little beings. And as I was exploring, I just wanted to see how the world worked. I was looking at underground bases and things like that, and I came across the grays. And they were not too happy with me exploring in the manner I was doing remote viewing, because remote viewing is a pretty powerful experience. I mean, it's kind of like astral projection, but in a different way. So that was my first encounter with ET beings, and then I started having encounters after that through deep meditation, and I ended up experiencing these really, I want to say like translucent blue beings. And in nature, I mean, like they had no face figure or anything like that. And this is where I got the structure and how I draw. When I show you guys examples of spirituality, is that they have energy coming through their head, which is where their third eye would be, and energy through the chest, which is where your soul essence is. But basically your whole energy is being right there. So I came across those beings, and they taught me a lot of things. They were kind of like the foundation of self-teaching. So I began to have these training sequences, kind of like if I was like in a holographic, like a holodeck on Star Trek. I began to just do different forms of energy through these structures. You know, you have your eyes closed, and using your third eye as a way as looking for your training. And then I started to have council meetings because I was hearing about council meetings, and I was like, what are these? So they're basically roundtable discussions, and I ended up having these discussions, these roundtables with Pleiadians and Syrians. What else was there? Water type beings, insect type beings. I ended up having these discussions and just learning on how things worked, how things became the way they are. Was quite an amazing encounter. And and all they told me when I was there is that I was an important person and that I needed to continue my training. And but they told me feel free to continue to explore, so I did. So then I started to look into the Akashi records and ended up learning about guardians with those Akashi records, that you have to have trials and tribulations to gain access to certain parts of the library of the Akashi records. And so I ended up encountering a lot of different beings, tall beings of all kinds. I mean, from like ogre structured beings, dog beings, what else was there? Sarcastic beings. I came across one of them. They were kind of weird. But as a whole, this is where you really learn on how these contacts work too, is with the visualization. Is realizing that when you experience this stuff, whether you're going through a perceived library in the Akashi records or talking with beings, is that they're projecting, they are projecting what you have experienced or what's going to make sense to you. I think that's where a lot of people have never experienced that, is that when you're having encounters, you got to really realize on how these beings are communicating with you, because some beings don't really have a form. They just are psychically linked with you. So they're trying to show you them. So they may project themselves in a body, but they're not really in a body. They're just projecting themselves in that way. It's really complex when you encounter ETs and the experiences. And the only reason why I can look at it in that perspective is because I have an open mind and I don't just take things literally on what I'm seeing. Same way with past experiences. Now, past experiences you can actually remembering your past experiences. So it's just that you're accessing your soul matrix and you're just gathering and downloading those memories of your past lives. Like I said, I've been a Lyran being for quite a while, which is a cat being, tiger being, a lion being. I had many encounters, past life encounters, so I've had encounters with those beings. I've also been, I had a past life experiences multiple times on Arcturian as well. I've been on Arcturian, and that was a wild experience as well, because a lot of theirs focus is kind of like a logic, kind of like the Vulcans on Star Trek. Is a lot about logic, and they went through a lot of turning points in their experience. So they became a hive mind where everything was logic. Everything was just like a Borg collective. So then we had beings eventually come in and they wanted to alter the hive mind. So it became more of a dividing state, and then it became too divided. So that was my experiences as an Arcturian, is that I experienced both the hive mind point of Arcturian, and then experienced the dividing state of Octurian. It was a wild experience, you know, and you know, this is just what I've experienced, and you just start putting together all the other experiences that people have had with their past lives. And then again, I was part of the Great Orion Syrian Galactic War.